April 6, 1945. 5:58 p.m. off Okinawa's western horizon. A low sun hangs over the sea like a welding arc behind a thin cloud, turning every wave into broken glass. On the deck of a radar picket destroyer, paint is blistered from weeks of salt and heat. Steel plates sweat. Men sweat harder. The air smells like cordite that never quite leaves. Hot oil, wet canvas, tobacco ground into seams. The ship rolls gently, almost kindly, and for a moment the ocean feels too calm for what everyone expects. The crew wants to believe the worst of it is behind them. The big landings are underway. The fleet is vast. Japan is running out of planes, running out of fuel, running out of time. A sailor at the rail squints into the bright haze and mutters to no one in particular, as if saying out loud makes it true. Maybe the suicide raids are easing. Maybe the sky is finally emptying. Then a voice cuts through the ship like a knife. Bogies. It comes from the Combat Information Center CIC room, without windows buried in the ship's ribs, where men stare at green radar scopes and try to make sense of ghosts. The word doesn't spread like a rumor. It spreads like electricity. A petty officer snaps upright. Another drops his cigarette without realizing it. Somewhere aft, a bosun's mate starts running before he fully knows why. General quarters have been sounding so often that it stopped feeling like an alarm and started feeling like the ship's heartbeat. But this time, the beat is different. The loudspeaker crackles, distorted by salt and fatigue. General quarters. General quarters. All hands man your battle stations. Boot saws hammer on ladders. Fingers fumble with helmet straps. A gun crew curses at a jam feed tray, then slams it shut with the heel of a palm. Someone's hands shake too hard to light another cigarette. Someone else laughs once, short and wrong, then stops. On the Oerlikons mount, a 20-year-old seaman, cheeks hollow now from weeks of adrenaline and sleeplessness, leans into the sight. He's trained for this. Hours on drills. Hours on the feel of the weapon. The way of the charging handle. The clamp of the shoulder rests. The way the barrel wants to climb if you let it. He tells himself he's ready. You can almost feel the deck vibrating under your knees as the ship's engines adjust. The helmsman responding to orders that arrive with clipped urgency. The destroyer begins to turn, not fast enough to look dramatic, but fast enough that the horizon slides sideways. The ocean doesn't care. The ocean never cares. Up on the bridge, the captain dark circles under his eyes. Binoculars always in reach, stands with the rigid stillness of a man who knows he can't flinch. The ship is a picket. A warning post, a sacrificial outer ring thrown forward the carriers and battleships to buy the fleet minutes, sometimes seconds. The destroyer is small enough that the sky feels closer. The first rule of Okinawa is that the air can kill you before you know it exists. Down in CIC, the radar operator's voice is tight, controlled. Multiple contacts. Bearing 270. Range decreasing. Angels low. Low. That word sits heavy. High-level raiders give you time. Low-level attackers use the sea as a mask, slipping under the radar horizon until the last possible moment. The operator watches a bright that glide inward, and he's staring at it like he can force it farther away by will alone. A lieutenant in CIC, sleeves rolled. Collar damp, leans over the scope and does the math with his eyes. The dot is moving too steadily, too purposefully, not weaving like a scared pilot, not probing, coming straight. Even through the sterile language of bearings and ranges, you can hear the shape of intention. Above deck, men scan the sky with binoculars until their forearms ache. The sun, the cloud, the glare, everything works against them. The horizon is a smear of silver, a faint line of land to starboard. A low ceiling overhead that turns the sky into a lid. The gunners wait for the word to open fire. They do not want to fire too early and waste ammunition. They do not want to fire too late and die. The balance between those two is measured in heartbeats. A messenger shoves through to a gun crew, breath ragged. CIC says they're coming in fast. Fast. Another heavy word. Because speed means you can't think in paragraphs. You think in flashes. Clamp, aim, squeeze, correct. Again. The gun is your entire world. A plane appeared where there was nothing. Just a dark pin prick against a bright wash. It's so small, so easily missed, that for a second the human brain refuses to accept it. Just a speck. A bird. A trick of the eye. Then it grows. Wings. Fuselage. A spinning prop you can't quite see, only sense. A shape that keeps getting bigger, because it is coming directly at you. Someone yells, incoming, as if the ship hasn't already absorbed it. The 5-inch guns fire first. The concussion slams through the destroyer's bones. A sheet of flame. A roar that feels physical, like being punched in the chest. Smoke drifts across the deck, sharp and chemical. The big gun shells arc out, invisible after the first second, but you can imagine them climbing into the gray, searching for a target that refuses to be found. Then the 40mm Bofors joins in heavier, faster, hard mechanical thumping that shakes the mount and scatters brass. The gun captain shouts corrections over the noise. The gunners can't hear him. They read his mouth. They read his hands. The seaman on the 20mm tracks the plane as it drops lower, slicing through haze. He feels his stomach tighten. He tries to remember every lecture, every practice burst. Lead the target. Don't chase it. Don't freeze. And that is when the most sickening part reveals itself. The plane doesn't jink, doesn't abort, doesn't climb away. It keeps coming. Not as a pilot would come, trying to survive. As a weapon would come, trying to hit. In that moment, a man learns what kamikaze truly means, not the word, not the propaganda, but the behavior, the absolute refusal to turn away. It is the opposite of instinct. The destroyer's bridge shouts helm orders. The ship begins a harder turn, trying to throw off the aim point. The deck tilts. Men grab rails and gun shields. The sea rises to one side and falls away on the other. The ship is moving, but the plane is still centered, still growing, still locked to them like a sight picture. The seaman squeezes the trigger. The 20mm chatters, a violent rattle that blurs his vision. Tracers whip out in a bright line, then vanish into daylight. The gun bucks. He fights it. His mouth is open, but he doesn't remember making any sound. The plane is close enough that you can see something that might be a cockpit glint, close enough to feel the unreality of another human inside, choosing this. The weapon crews pour fire into sky, until the air feels filled with metal. Flak bursts bloom like dirty cotton. Smoke trails twist. The ship is loud beyond comprehension. An entire floating city of machines screaming at one speck of death. And still, that speck refuses to break. At the edge of the deck, a sailor watches the attacker and realizes the truth that Okinawa teaches quickly. Sometimes you can do everything right and still not have enough time. The plane drops into the last seconds, and the destroyer's world narrows to one question that no one can say out loud. Is it going to hit? The plane hits the air around the destroyer before it hits anything else. Gunfire tears the sky into strips. The 40mm hammers until the barrels blur with heat shimmer. The 5-inch throws another shell, and another, the shock waves beating against ribs and teeth. Men yell ranges that are already obsolete. Then a burst catches the attacker's wing root. For a fraction of a second, hope flashes irrational, bright. The plane wobbles. Smoke thickens. It looks almost like it might slide off its line and vanish into the sea. It doesn't. It dips, compensates, and keeps driving in, now lower, now more dangerous. The pilot has shortened the problem. He's taken away the last sliver of time. On the Oerlikon, the seaman drags the sight ahead of the nose and fires again. The gun chugs like it's alive, spitting brass that bounces and skitters across the deck. The world is reduced to recoil and tracer, recoil and tracer. He can taste the propellant in the back of his throat. A petty officer beside him screams something maybe hold it, maybe lead him, but it's swallowed by the ship's own violence. The attacker flashes past the forward gun so low the crew can see black cross-bracing under the wings. For an instant it's close enough to feel personal, like a man leaning into your face. The seaman catches a glimpse of the cockpit, and his mind does something strange. It tries to find the pilot's eyes. It wants proof there's a person. It wants to understand. He sees only glare and motion, and a shape inside that never turns away. The plane slams into the ship's forward superstructure in a bloom of smoke and fragments that looks almost soft until the shock arrives. The deck jumps underfoot. A hard, physical slam travels up through knees and spine. And then the fire follows. A sheet of flame whips along painted steel, curling into corners, tasting canvas, licking the edges of signal flags and life rings. Burning fuel splashes outward in orange rivers that cling to the deck as if the ship itself has started bleeding light. The concussion knocks men flat. One gunner is thrown into the gun shield, and for a second he can't tell if his arm is broken or just numb. Someone is screaming. There is always someone screaming. The destroyer shudders and keeps moving because the ocean will not grant you a pause. Damage control parties spill out of hatches like a second crewmen with axes, hoses, extinguishers, and faces set into the expression of people walking into a furnace because there is no alternative. Fire party forward. A voice barks through the smoke, hoarse and commanding. Get foam on that fuel. The air is thick with burning aviation, gasoline sharp, sweet, nauseating. It steals breath. It turns every inhale into a decision. A lieutenant painted with soot and streaks like war paint crawls across the deck toward a wounded sailor, grabs him by the harness, and drags him back behind the gun mount. The wounded man's helmet is gone. His eyes are wide and blank, the look of someone whose mind has stepped out of the room. Stay with me, the lieutenant says, but the words are for himself as much as the sailor. Stay with me. The ship's captain forces himself to keep looking outward, not inward. He knows the next attacker will come while they're still fighting this one. Okinawa has taught them that the second blow often lands when your hands are busy with the first. This destroyer is a picket, one of the small gray sentries stationed far from the carriers, far from the battleships, far from the comforting mass of the fleet. The picket line is not glamorous. It is not a poster. It is a cheap alarm system paid for in blood. The job is simple in concept and brutal in practice. Watch the sky with radar. Spot what's coming and shout a warning before it arrives. Those warnings minutes, sometimes seconds, give combat air patrol fighters time to intercept, give the big ships time to turn, give gun directors time to solve a firing problem. But the warning comes at a price. The picket ships are exposed. They are the first thing an incoming raid sees. They are small enough to kill, close enough to aim at, vulnerable enough that a determined pilot can choose them as his final target with terrifying ease. In CIC, the radar scope is smeared with sweat from a hand that is wiped too quickly. The operator's voice shakes for the first time. Contact still inbound. Multiple. Range. He swallows. The dot is already too close. On deck, the fire is being beaten down, blanket with foam that looks like dirty snow. Men stomp at burning scraps of fabric. A gun crew chief slaps a sailor across the helmet, not from cruelty, from urgency to snap him out of staring. Back on your sight, because the sky isn't done. A messenger arrives from a bridge, breathless, soot on his face. Captain says stay sharp. They're not finished. A few men laugh again short, panicked. The sound of a person who doesn't know what to do with fear. Most don't. Most just reset. Reload. Wipe sweat and ash from their eyes. Grip steel until knuckles whiten. Off the port bow. A bigger ship, maybe a cruiser. Maybe a transport throws up a wall of flak. So thick it looks like the air is turned to dirt. The destroyer's crew watches it and feels the sick pull of envy. Bigger ship. More guns. More armor. More compartments. More chances. Then a shout raw. Immediate jerks every head back toward the sea skyline. Plane. Low. Coming in low. At first. Only the forward lookout has it. Then another. Then a gunner on the Bofors. Then the whole ship sees the dark speck slicing just above the wave tops, using the sea like cover. There is no time for careful fire control now. This is a brawl. The 20 millimeters begins chattering again. Tracers stitch the air. The Bofors swings, the mount squealing under the torque, crewmen hauling it around by muscle and instinct. The destroyer turns, helm hard over, trying to throw off the attacker's angle. The deck tilts, the horizon slides, and the plane rises just slightly like a shark surfacing. For one awful second, the crew can see the attackers line perfectly, straight at them. Again, the seaman at the Oerlikon feels something cold under his ribs. Not fear exactly, a realization. The kind that clicks in with a clean, merciless sound. The gunner fires until the barrel glows faintly, until the line of tracers feels like a prayer, until his shoulder aches from recoil and the world narrows to the front sight and the oncoming shape, and through the sight he sees it. The attacker isn't damaged, isn't wavering, isn't even trying to avoid the flak. It is choosing a point on the ship, choosing him. The second plane comes in so low it looks welded to the sea. It rises at the last instant, not to escape the waves, but to clear them just enough to keep its wings from clipping the water before it hits steel. The move is deliberate, practiced, the kind of maneuver you do when you've already accepted you won't need the aircraft afterward. On the destroyer, every gun that can bear swings toward it. The ship's own noise becomes a solid thing, metal banging metal. Shouted orders torn apart by concussion, the brutal mechanical rhythm of automatic fire. The 40 millimeters Bofors lays a line of tracers ahead of the attacker, like a fence being built in midair. The plane punches through the fence. It doesn't wobble. It doesn't hesitate. It doesn't do the one thing every American on deck is silently begging it to do. Turn away. The seaman at the Oerlikon feels his breathing go shallow. He aims, fires, corrects, fires again. The mount vibrates so hard it numbs his fingers. Hot brass spatters around his boots. He tastes salt and smoke and something bitter he can't name. Across the deck, a chief petty officer older than most of the crew, face lined from sun and stress, leans into a sailor who's freezing at a station. Move! The chief roars. You want to live? You move! The sailor jerks back into action, hands snapping to the feed, eyes blinking rapidly as if waking from a nightmare. The chief doesn't wait for thanks. He never will. He turns his head back to the sky with the expression of a man watching a door swing open. On the bridge, the captain's voice cuts through everything. Hard right rudder. The ship heels. Men grab anything they can. A coil of rope slides. A loose skitters, clanging, like a tiny bell in a cathedral of violence. The destroyers try to make itself a moving target. Try and make the attacker miss by feet that might as well be miles. The plane adjusts with it. That's the part that crawls into the gut. Not the speed, not the sound, the intelligence of it. The way it seems to read the ship's motion and simply match it. In CIC, an ensign watches the scope and whispers what no one wants to say. He's tracking us. Outside, the gunners see it too. Their tracers keep reaching, and the attacker keeps coming, refusing to be pushed off its line. The destroyer is turning and firing and spilling smoke, and still the nose of that aircraft stays pointed at them like judgment. A burst from the starboard Bofors catches the plane's fuselage. Pieces fling away scraps of skin, a flutter of debris. The aircraft shudders. And still it comes. You can almost feel the seconds stretching, thin and elastic. There's enough time for absurd, unwanted thoughts. A sailor remembers a letter he didn't answer. A gunner thinks about the last meal he ate on shore and how normal it felt. A radio man wonders if anyone will ever know he was brave. Then the attacker begins to trail smoke. Real smoke, thickening, pouring backward. It hurts. The seaman at the 20 millimeters feels the surge of hope again and hates himself for it, because hope has been a liar out here. He fires harder, as if anger can turn rounds into certainty. The barrel is so hot the air above it ripples. The plane closes. The sound changes. It's no longer distant engine noise swallowed by wind. It's a ripping growl layered over gunfire, a metallic scream that seems to tear straight through the smoke. Hold it, someone yells near the mount. Try and keep their fire disciplined. Try and keep them from wasting the last of the ready ammo too soon. But there is no discipline left. There is only survival. The attacker suddenly pitches up the tiniest climb, then drops again. A final correction. A final commitment. The captain sees where it's aimed. Not the center of the ship. Not the waterline where it might break the keel. It's coming for the forward gun position and the bridge above it. Coming for eyes and brains. Coming for command. This isn't random. It's targeted. Left 10 degrees. The captain snaps. Left 10. The helmsman obeys. The ship responds sluggishly, heavy with momentum and wounded systems. A destroyer can turn fast, but not fast enough to outrun fate at 200 knots. The attacker clears the forward superstructure by a hair. For an instant, it looks like it might skip past, like the ship's last-second turn has worked. You see men flinch, not from pain, but from the sheer proximity of death. Then the plane clips the mast or a rigging line something thin, almost invisible, and that tiny touch changes everything. The aircraft yaws, rolling slightly, and the new angle is worse. It slams into the ship near the bridge. The impact is a sound that doesn't belong to the sea. A heavy, crunching detonation that makes the air itself tremble. A blast of flame and black smoke erupts upward, and for a heartbeat the bridge vanishes behind a curtain of fire. The shock wave throws men down like dolls. The deck becomes a skating rink of water, fuel, and foam. Splinters of metal rain. A hatch cover jumps in its frame. Somewhere inside the ship, lights flicker, then go out. And then the screaming starts again, closer now, more frantic, layered with commands. Get the wounded out. Fire on the bridge. Stretchers forward. A corpseman appears as if conjured, kneeling beside a sailor whose leg is a mangled shadow. The corpseman's hands move with fast, practice brutality tourniquet. Tighten, tighten, until the sailor sobs, then goes quiet. The corpseman doesn't look up. He can't afford to. A damage control party forces its way toward the bridge, dragging hoses through debris. They look like men walking into a burning doorway. Their faces are smeared black, except where sweat has carved rivers down their cheeks. Maybe the captain is still alive. No one on deck can see. The bridge is a furnace of smoke and shattered glass. The speaker system is dead. Orders don't come by loudspeaker now. They come by runners, by hand signals, by raw shouting into each other's faces. And while the ship fights to keep itself afloat, while men stamp out flames and pull friend from wreckage, the sky does what it has been doing for weeks. It refills. From over the horizon, more dots appear, small at first, then multiplying. The radar picket destroyer burning. Battered has given the fleet its warning. but now it has to survive the price of giving it. A sailor near the stern looks up through smoke and sees a new attacker dropping out of cloud base, nose down, sunlight flashing off the wings. He doesn't shout incoming this time. He just stares, because he finally understands the true geometry of Okinawa. One ship, one thin ring of steel, holding back an entire sky. And the next plane is already choosing its point. The new attacker falls out of the cloud base like it was dropped. For a half second, it's almost beautiful, just a silhouette slipping through bright haze. Wings steady, nose down, a straight line drawn toward the destroyer's smoke. Then the illusion snaps and it becomes what it is, a guided human decision. The ship's guns try to swing, but the deck is chaotic now, hoses snaking, foam knee-deep in places, men carrying limp bodies, a gaping wound where the bridge used to speak to them. The destroyer is still turning, still moving, but its rhythm is broken. Smoke blinds the lookouts. Firelight strobes across faces. A gun captain on after Bofors shouts until his voice vanishes. Track him, get ahead. The mount starts around. Too slow, not from weakness, but from friction. Blasted metal jam gears, a splintered guardrail wedged where it shouldn't be. Two sailors throw their shoulders into the mechanism, muscles straining, teeth bared. The gun slews another few degrees. The plane is already closer. Somewhere in the wreckage near the bridge, a signalman staggers out, hair singed. His eyes are bright with shock. He's carrying a bundle that doesn't make sense at first, then you see its signal flags and a torn chart that's still trying to be useful. He looks upward, sees a dive, and for a moment his face goes blank, as if his mind refuses to accept that the sky is still charging at them. Down! Someone screams, and the word finally lands inside him. He drops flat, clutching the flags like they're life preservers. The destroyer's remaining voice comes from runners, now messengers, sprinting across a deck that's slick with foam and fuel, shouting into ears, slapping shoulders, pointing. A lieutenant face cut, uniform torn, grabs a sailor by the front of his blouse. Get to the after gun. Now. The sailor nods too fast. He runs, boots sliding, catches himself on a stanchion, keeps moving. Above them, the attacker's engine note rises in pitch, a hungry scream. The plane isn't weaving. It isn't dodging. It's doing what the others did, coming straight in, clean and unwavering. That is the moment when many men, good men, trained men feel their faith crack, not in God, in probability, in the idea that if you do everything right, you get to live. On a radar picket station off Okinawa, you can do everything right and still be chosen. The after Oerlikons finally opens up, the guns chatter sharp against the deeper thump of the 40 millimeters that has started firing again. Tracers leap into the falling aircraft. The rounds look like they should push it aside, like they should carve the line away from the ship. But the line doesn't bend. The plane drops into the last seconds. It is so close now that details flicker into view in insignia, the blur of the prop, the cockpit canopy. You can almost imagine the pilot's hands on the stick, the posture of resolve, the narrowing of his focus until the ship fills his vision the way the ship's guns fill theirs. The after-gun captain keeps firing, keeps shouting corrections, his face twisted with a kind of rage that is also fear. A man beside him starts praying, without realizing it. Another is cursing in a steady stream, the words mechanical, like he's trying to build a wall out of profanity. A burst lands right at the engine cowling. The attacker lurches. The nose dips harder. Smoke bellows. For an instant, the aircraft seems to lose its thought like a stunned animal. Then it steadies again, pushed forward by its own momentum, by gravity, by the last fraction of will that remains. It is hurt, but it doesn't matter anymore. It doesn't need to fly well. It only needs to arrive. The destroyer tries one more hard turn. The helmsman throws the wheel. The ship answers with a sluggish heel. Deck tilt, horizon slide. Men stagger and grab. The sea rises up, black and indifferent, just beyond the rail. The attacker corrects again. And now the impossible becomes clear. The plane is not aiming for the center of the ship. It's aiming for the aftergun positions where men are packed tight, where ammunition is stacked, where fire will find everything it wants. The aftergun captain sees it. He sees the angle. He sees where the plane will hit if nothing changes. He does the only thing he can do. He keeps firing. Tracers stitch the aircraft. The windshield flashes. Something in the fuselage detonates a soft pop, then a lick of flame. The plane is on fire now, a torch falling out of the sky. It hits anyway. It slams into ship's aft section with a grinding, tearing impact that sounds like steel being ripped apart by a giant hand. Flame surges outward. Ammunition cooks off with sharp cracks. The after deck becomes a hurricane of heat and fragments. Men are thrown. Some go down and don't get up. Others crawl, blinded, their hands searching for railings through smoke. The air becomes unbreathable, thick with burning fuel and paint and cordite. For a moment, the destroyer feels like it might break in half. Damage control teams rush again, because there is no other response. They charge toward the inferno with foam and hoses, with axes in bare hands, faces set into that same grim mask. Not bravery as Hollywood sells it, but obedience to necessity. They fight fire the way you fight an enemy, with timing, with teamwork, with the knowledge that one mistake is a funeral. Somewhere below decks, a sailor is trapped behind a jammed door. He pounds and pounds, the sound muffled by steel. Another sailor hears it, looks toward the smoke, and hesitates. It's a hesitation measured in the length of a heartbeat. Then he runs into the smoke anyway. On the bridge, or what's left of it, a surviving officer tries to regain command. He has no loudspeaker, no clean lines to CIC. He has smoke in his eyes and blood on his sleeve. He shouts orders down a ladder well to a runner. Tell engineering, keep her moving. Tell them keep pressure on the pumps. The runner disappears into the ship's guts. The destroyer staggers forward, wounded, smoking, still afloat by stubbornness and training and the refusal of its crew to let it die yet. And then, as if Okinawa wants to make sure the lesson is carved deep, the sky offers one more cruel detail. Out beyond the smoke, you can see the main body of the fleet carriers, battleships, transports still intact, still fighting, still moving. The warning did its job. Fighters arc overhead like angry insects. Flak blossoms around the bigger ships in distant gray bursts. The picket has taken the blows meant for them. In the wake of the last impact, the surviving gunners look around and realize something that no briefing ever explained properly. The picket line isn't just radar and ranges. It's men placed intentionally in the path of death so other men can live. A sailor with soot-blackened cheeks sits down hard against a bulkhead, suddenly unable to stand. His hands shake violently now that the firing has stopped. He looks at his palms as if they belong to someone else. Near him, the chief petty officer's voice raw, eyes reddened, turns and scans the horizon again. Not because he thinks it's over, because Okinawa taught him the opposite. There's never an over until the last plane is gone. He squints into the bright haze. Smoke thins and reveals the sea again, glittering and calm, obscene in its beauty. Somewhere fire still crackles. Somewhere a man moans. Somewhere another man laughs once. Quietly, not from humor, but from the shock of surviving a thing that should have killed him. The chief raises binoculars and locks onto a distant. Another plane? Or a friendly fighter? Or a piece of debris drifting in the glare? He cannot tell at first. And that uncertainty in those few seconds where you don't know if the sky is empty or armed is the final cruelty of Okinawa. It forces you to live inside the question. The chief lowers the binoculars and shouts to the nearest gun crew anyway. Stay on it. Stay on it. Because the war is close to ending. Everyone knows it. and yet the sky is still loud with death. The last lesson is simple, brutal, and unforgettable. Even at the edge of victory, the enemy can still reach out and touch you if you look away for 1 second.